If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Download now.
What state brings the best boxers? Man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because you've got great states that have are big boxing states as far as fighters that they've created, and also as far as fan base. And those right away come to mind: New York, Texas, California. Big states. I mean, you can say Nevada, but a lot of guys that are in Nevada, living in Nevada, originally are from other places, and they moved to Nevada for tax reasons, and also because there's a lot of boxing gyms. Floyd Mayweather comes to mind as the biggest name out of those guys. But nonetheless, you know, even guys like Caleb Plant, and so if I go on that list, it'll go on forever and ever and ever. But because they're originally from other states, I remember there was this argument in Wild Card Gym we were having, you know, and I remember Roger Mayweather in Vegas used to always say this when I trained at the Mayweather gym. The Midwest has created the best fighters. That's what I always say. You know, a guy like the Michigan area, Ray Robinson was originally from there, James Toney, Floyd Mayweather, so on and so forth. You got an argument. When I was an amateur, and this is typically a big part of the generational amateur scene, Cincinnati, Ohio in general had some of the best fighters in the amateurs, but a lot of them didn't pan out as pros. Yes, you got Aaron Pryor, you got guys like Buster Douglas for a little while, and maybe one or two others in those prior generations. But for the most part, until this generation, they typically didn't pan out as pros. It was a lot of discipline issues. Even in my generation, there was a lot of very good fighters from Cincinnati, and they didn't really pan out. Ricardo Williams Jr. being the biggest name. I mean, the biggest name out of all those guys. You know, so typically Ohio used to develop some really nice prospects, really good young fighters, man. But they also came with a little bit of an undisciplined manner of living, and the pros that typically catches up to you. This generation, it kind of changed a little bit. I mean, we still see some of that undisciplined fat nature, but they've kind of broken through and become champions. Guys like Adrian Broner, maybe even Robert Easter, the Bandcamp crew, Rashi Warren, all became world champions. So they sort of broke the mold. But you also they also put more of a spotlight on themselves, and you can kind of see when you put the spotlight on those guys, you know what happens with guys from Ohio a lot of times, because you know Jake Paul, ladies and gentlemen. Jake Paul is from Ohio as well. You know, we got to mention him. But to tell you the truth, I think that you sort of see the microscope when these fighters were able to push through into the big time, like Broner, or Warren, and Easter, and you started to see some of the reasons why the guys like them before earlier generations didn't break through, because these guys were able to break through but still had discipline issues or public life issues, right? And they were still not able to get the best of themselves, because I think when you look at Broner, Easter, and Rashi Warren, although they had solid careers, you almost get left like thinking you were going to get more or wanting more, because they had so much talent, right? And that was sort of the issue with the prior generations, and even the generations during my generation and prior as well, for Cincinnati fighters. I saw guys like Ricardo Williams in my generation, Ron Seiler, Broderick Harper, I remember, was a good Cincinnati fighter. They didn't really pan out as pros. And so again, I think it boils down to a lot of outside the ring issues for these guys. I don't know what's in the water down there, but they get themselves in a little bit of trouble, or they lose their focus in the pros. And in the pros, you need extra discipline, because the pros, the fights are longer, more damaging, and you're just going through more pain, you know. And eventually that catches up to you.
If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Enjoy watching fights in a bar, sipping a cold one? We got you. An interactive map with your local boxing bars is available to you at any time. And that's not everything. Set reminders, buy tickets, watch official highlights, get boxing news, and so much more. Download now. Thank us later.
Ohio has given us a lot of good fighters, but they produce a lot of good fighters as well. You have a good argument there, but they don't always pan out as pros. I had this debate with my boy Prentice Brewer, who was another prospect at one time for Ohio, now is developing into a good trainer. He mentioned Ohio, but again, it's sort of that kind of thing. And I also told Prentice this. I said, there's no really right or wrong answer to this. You know, you can make an argument for anybody, and you can also make an argument against any state for this as well. I'm a New York guy, you know, so for me, I'm gonna be really top heavy for New York, and I've got plenty of reasons why I can give you New York. I mean, just in my generation alone, and around my era, you had Mike Tyson, you had Riddick Bowe, you had Junior Jones, you had Mark Breland, you had Aaron Superman Davis, you had then came myself, you had Danny Jacobs, Saddam Ali. You know, it's so many New York fighters. I'm probably forgetting a couple. You know, Hector Camacho obviously was a New York Puerto Rican fighter. You know, and so on and so forth. I'm looking at this tweet from Lucas Carroll, and it says boxers from Texas and California made up nearly 40% of all finalists at the USA Boxing National Championships last December, producing more than the next 5 states combined. Texas in particular punched above its weight, sending 34 of the 140 overall champs finalists. And I can actually agree with this as well. Cincinnati always had a very good amateur team, but Texas and California were so big that they had multiple regions in the same state. Ohio, typically, the guys that came out of Ohio were all from Cincinnati. So Cincinnati was like a region onto its own, pretty much. You know, you had a couple of exceptions, but Cincinnati developed a lot of talent. But when I was at the Nationals, Texas and California was such big states that there was different regions. You'd have like guys from Northern California and guys from Southern California at the Nationals, and they'd be badasses. People from different parts of Texas would be badasses, you know? So I think that obviously that tweet right there still stands as a high level for the high level that they produce, even in the amateurs. I knew this way, okay? I knew this. I remember when I was at the Nationals, if I would draw a guy from Cincinnati, Philadelphia, California, or Texas, I knew I had my hands full, regardless of where they were ranked. Because sometimes those states would send fighters that, you know, weren't really known to the Nationals, and states still perform well. I can remember I actually fought in the 2000 National Golden Gloves, and I won my first 2 fights. And I remember a lot of the 2000 Olympic class that turned pro, because they were, you know, whoever didn't make the Olympics and the Olympic trials a couple of months before, or the month before, just left the amateur to turn pro. So it left 2000 National Golden Gloves as sort of an empty, an open space to kind of fill up the vacuum. And I remember there was a guy named Anthony Mora, who was the highest ranked guy at the Nationals at that time. And he was like a top 10 guy, but he was in the other bracket. And I remember thinking, man, okay, I've got a bracket where it's kind of a lot of guys are searching for a reputation here, including myself. I didn't have the longest amateur career. At that time, I was still kind of developing into myself. And I remember fighting the first 2 fights, and then in the quarterfinals, I drew Urbano Antillon. I didn't know him. We fought a fight. I lost a 3-2 split, and I got sent home. I got sent packing. It was a close fight, but, you know, you could go to Antillon. I don't have a problem with the decision. It could have literally went either way. And these security systems here are pretty much a pain in the ass. But nonetheless, we're going to keep going despite that. And this is what I'm saying. Antillon was a guy who nobody knew at that time, and he ended up beating me 3-2 in a decision, and then going on to win the Nationals, and he beat Mora in the finals. Even, I think it was a 5-0 decision. He beat me 3-2 split. So basically, the moral of the story was that me and Urbano should have been in the finals, but we drew each other in the quarters. You know, and nonetheless, that's an example of California sending top-level amateurs to the Nationals all the time, whether you knew them or whether you didn't know them. I can remember later that year, the 2000 PAL Nationals, I reached the semifinals. And again, me and Vicente Escobedo were the two. Vicente Escobedo would later become a 2004 U.S. Olympian and even challenge Adrian Broner for a world title. He would fail, but he would challenge Adrian Broner for a world title in the pros. But I remember me and Vicente were kind of like the talk of the tournament. You know, we were the hottest guys going through the levels, and the bracket had us matched up. Well, we were going to face each other in the semis, so it was pretty much the opinion was whoever would win between me and Vicente would get to the finals. And again, another California fighter. And he beat me in the semis. I thought I won that fight, but the computer system said differently. And he ended up winning the tournament. You know, again, another example of high-level California amateur fighters, you know, making things difficult for everybody else at the Nationals. So yeah, so which state really comes up with the top dog in terms of pros and amateurs? I don't know. You know, you have a lot to choose from. There's no right or wrong answer. And like I said, I just gave you an example of all kinds of guys from all kinds of states and the stronger regions to look out for.
If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Download now.